The Vexteri Empire's first detailed scan of Earth came on an unremarkable Tuesday afternoon. Their massive detection vessel, hidden behind Saturn's rings, deployed thousands of quantum sensors to analyze what they considered yet another primitive world. Admiral Veclor stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship Dominance, his scaled fingers drumming against the crystalline command console as the data streamed in. "Pathetic," he muttered, mandibles clicking in disappointment. "They still rely on combustion engines and chemical rockets. Their most advanced computers use silicon." His subordinates chittered in amusement, their collective disdain evident in the way their secondary eyes narrowed. The Vexteri had conquered 17 civilizations across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Each victory had been easier than the last as their technological superiority grew. Now they saw Earth as nothing more than a primitive backwater, barely worth the resources required to subjugate it. But 12 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that didn't exist on any map, Dr. Sarah Chen was watching the aliens watch Earth. The quantum detection grid she had helped design was picking up every scan, every probe, every byte of data the Vexteri were collecting. Her team had been preparing for this moment for 15 years, ever since they detected the first faint traces of the Empire's expansion through the galaxy. "They're buying it," she said, allowing herself a small smile. "Every piece of false data we're feeding them is being accepted without question." Around her, dozens of scientists and military personnel monitored holographic displays showing the true state of human technology. Quantum computers that made the Vexteri systems look primitive, zero-point energy generators that powered cities without leaving a trace, and weapons that could reshape reality itself. General Marcus Hayes stood behind her, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the displays. "How long before they make their move?" "Based on their previous conquest patterns, they'll spend 3 months gathering intelligence, then launch what they believe will be an overwhelming first strike." Sarah pulled up a simulation showing the predicted Vexteri attack patterns. "They'll target what they think are our primary military installations, the decoy bases we've been building for the past decade." The general nodded, his expression grim but determined. "And our real capabilities, completely hidden. The quantum masking field is working perfectly. As far as they can tell, we're still arguing about whether climate change is real and trying to figure out how to make sustainable fusion power." She brought up another display, this one showing the vast network of underground facilities and orbital platforms that had been carefully concealed from alien detection. The truth was, humanity had made a quantum leap in technology 30 years ago. The discovery of zero-point energy manipulation had led to advancements that would have seemed like magic even a generation before. But rather than broadcast these achievements to the cosmos, Earth's leaders had made an unprecedented decision. They would hide their true capabilities, presenting instead the image of a divided, technologically primitive world. They had watched as the Vexteri Empire expanded, studied their tactics, and prepared. Every piece of visible human technology was carefully crafted to appear primitive, while masking something far more advanced. Every satellite in orbit was designed to look like simple communications or weather monitoring equipment, while housing quantum weapons platforms. Even the internet was a carefully maintained facade, hiding the true quantum network that connected human consciousness across the planet. Latest intelligence suggests they've already started moving their fleet into position. Sarah continued, pulling up a new set of data. "They're being cautious, but not because they fear us. They're just following standard protocol." General Hayes allowed himself a small chuckle. Imagine their surprise when they realize their standard protocol is exactly what we wanted them to do. He turned to address the room. "All right, people, this is what we've been preparing for. The Vexteri think they're studying us, but we've been studying them for far longer. They see what we want them to see, a primitive species ripe for conquest. Let's make sure that illusion holds until the perfect moment." Sarah looked at the latest scan of the Vexteri fleet. Their ships were impressive, she had to admit, But they were also predictable, relying on brute force and overwhelming technological superiority. They had no concept of the trap they were walking into, no idea that every move they made was being anticipated and countered before they even made it. In the coming months, humanity would play the role of the primitive species perfectly. They would let the Vextari grow confident, arrogant even, and when the Empire finally launched their invasion, expecting an easy conquest, they would learn a harsh lesson about underestimating humanity. As Sarah watched the alien scans continue, she couldn't help but feel a mix of anticipation and pride. The greatest trick humanity had ever pulled was convincing the galaxy they were primitive. Soon, the Vextari would learn just how costly that assumption would be. The abandoned mining facility in the Australian outback looked exactly like what it was supposed to be, a failed attempt at extracting rare earth minerals, shut down due to environmental concerns. Its rusted equipment and dilapidated buildings painted a perfect picture of human industrial waste. It was exactly the kind of site the Vextari scanning probes would dismiss as worthless. 2 kilometers below it, Dr. James Rodriguez watched as the latest quantum containment field stabilized around a piece of salvaged Vextari technology. The small device, recovered from a scout ship that had accidentally crashed in the Mojave Desert, was providing invaluable insight into their enemies' weaknesses. Their quantum shielding has a fundamental flaw, he explained to the holographic images of his colleagues projected around the lab. They're so confident in their technological superiority that they never considered someone might find a way to exploit the quantum uncertainty principle at the macro level. Dr. Chen's hologram nodded, her expression thoughtful, similar to what we found in their communication systems. They're using quantum entanglement for FTL communication, but their error correction is based on the assumption that no one else has mastered quantum manipulation. The truth was, humanity had surpassed the Vextari in quantum technology years ago. While the aliens used brute force approaches to quantum computing, humans had developed elegant solutions that worked with the fabric of reality rather than against it. But none of this showed up on the Vextari scans, thanks to the quantum masking field that covered every major human facility. In orbit, what appeared to be a simple weather satellite adjusted its position slightly. Inside, Captain Maria Santos monitored the latest data from the quantum sensor network. The Vextari fleet was growing. They were being cautious, methodical, following the same pattern they'd used to conquer other worlds. Their ships were impressive. Massive constructs of exotic materials that could reshape gravity itself. But they were also predictable. They're positioning their fleet exactly where the simulations predicted, she reported to the Quantum Encrypted Command Network. They still think our satellite network is primitive. They haven't detected any of the quantum weapon platforms. The weapon platforms were humanity's masterpiece of deception. Each one appeared to be nothing more than standard communications or research satellites. In reality, they housed technology that could manipulate the quantum fabric of space itself. The Vextari, for all their advanced technology, had never conceived of weapons that could alter probability at the quantum level. Deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, General Hayes walked through the largest of Earth's hidden facilities. The massive chamber housed row after row of quantum computers, each one more powerful than the entire visible computing power of Earth. These machines weren't just processing data. They were calculating possible futures, running simulations of every conceivable Vextari strategy, and developing countermeasures before the aliens even knew they needed them. "Show me the latest predictions," he commanded, and the air filled with holographic projections. The quantum computers had mapped out thousands of possible invasion scenarios. In each one, the Vextari followed predictable patterns, their tactical doctrine unchanged for centuries due to their consistent success. "They'll target our apparent power centers first," explained Colonel Sarah Wu, pointing to various locations on the holographic Earth. "Government buildings, military bases, power plants, all the decoys we've carefully constructed. They'll expect us to either surrender immediately or mount a disorganized resistance using our primitive weapons." What the Vextari didn't know was that humanity's true power centers were hidden deep underground or in plain sight, disguised as something else entirely. Every apparent weakness was carefully crafted, every vulnerability engineered to draw the aliens into a trap centuries in the making. In labs and facilities hidden across the globe, humans continued to refine their technology. They developed weapons that could disrupt quantum fields, shields that could redirect energy at the subatomic level, and communication systems that operated outside normal spacetime. All of this was accomplished under a carefully maintained veil of primitive technology and political discord. The Vextari intercepted human internet traffic, analyzed their broadcast communications, and studied their visible technology. They saw exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a species that was still debating the benefits of electric vehicles while their atmosphere filled with carbon dioxide. A species that launched chemical rockets while dreaming of reaching Mars. A species that would be easy to conquer. But beneath this carefully constructed facade, humanity was ready. Their quantum networks were linked, their weapons primed, their strategies perfected through millions of simulations. They watched as the Vextari fleet grew larger, as more ships arrived through quantum space, as the aliens prepared for what they thought would be a simple conquest. Dr. Rodriguez looked at the latest data from the quantum sensors. They'll be ready to strike soon. Their fleet is almost at full strength. General Hayes nodded, his expression grim but confident. Let them come. Everything is proceeding exactly as we planned. The greater their confidence, the greater their fall will be. In the skies above Earth, the Vextari continued their preparations, unaware that every move they made was being monitored, analyzed, and countered by technology they couldn't even detect. They thought they were the hunters, but in reality, they were walking into humanity's carefully laid trap. The only question was, how long would humanity let them maintain their illusion of superiority? The Vextari invasion began at dawn. Massive warships emerged from quantum space above every major city on Earth, their hull configurations designed to inspire terror. The sight of their fleet darkening the skies was meant to break humanity's spirit before the first shot was fired. Admiral Veclor stood on his command bridge, anticipating the panic and chaos that had marked the beginning of every previous conquest. But Earth's response was not what he expected. There was no panic in the streets, no mass hysteria. Instead, Earth's military forces executed what appeared to be a series of clumsy, disorganized retreat maneuvers. Cities were evacuated with what seemed like barely controlled chaos. Military units appeared to abandon their posts in disarray. "My admiral," his tactical officer reported, mandibles twitching in confusion. "The humans are. They're running away." Veclor's primary eyes narrowed. As expected, begin the first phase of the invasion. Target their military installations and government centers. Show them the futility of resistance. The Vextari fleet opened fire, their quantum-enhanced weapons raining destruction on carefully selected targets across the globe. Military bases erupted in spectacular explosions. Government buildings collapsed. Power plants went dark. It was a display of overwhelming force that had broken the will of 17 other civilizations. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Chen watched the destruction unfold on her quantum displays. Each explosion, each collapsed building, each destroyed military installation had been precisely calculated and prepared. The Vextari were destroying exactly what humanity wanted them to destroy. "They're following the script perfectly," she reported to General Hayes. "Every target they're hitting is a decoy. The quantum masking field is holding. They haven't detected any of our real facilities." The general nodded, watching as another apparent military base was reduced to rubble. "And our people? All safely evacuated weeks ago. The only casualties are automated drones and empty buildings. The quantum predictive network gave us the exact timing and targets of their first strike." She pulled up another display, showing the true status of Earth's defenses. "Our real military capabilities remain at 100%. In orbit, Captain Santos monitored the Vextari fleet movements from her quantum-cloaked platform. The alien ships were moving in standard conquest formation, following tactical doctrines they had used for centuries. "They're deploying ground forces," she reported, "exactly where we predicted they would." The Vexteri ground invasion was a marvel of military precision. Dropships descended through the atmosphere, landing troops in strategic locations across the globe. They encountered minimal resistance, exactly as planned. Human military forces appeared to be in full retreat, abandoning equipment and positions in their wake. Admiral Veclor watched with growing satisfaction as his forces secured one objective after another. "These humans are even weaker than our intelligence suggested," he commented to his staff. "They can barely mount an organized defense." His words echoed through quantum monitoring systems to command centers deep beneath the Earth's surface. Colonel Wu smiled as she heard them. "They're buying it completely," she said to her team. "Ready the next phase." Over the next several days, the pattern continued. The Vexteri advanced, and humanity retreated. Cities fell silent as their populations seemingly fled in terror. Military resistance grew increasingly sporadic and ineffective. Earth's governments appeared to be in chaos, unable to coordinate any meaningful response to the invasion. But beneath the surface, a different reality existed. In quantum-shielded bunkers and hidden facilities, humanity's true military force remained intact and ready. Every retreat was carefully choreographed, every abandoned position precisely calculated. The quantum predictive network continued to analyze and anticipate every Vexteri move. Dr. Rodriguez monitored the quantum sensors as they tracked Vexteri troop movements. "They're getting overconfident," he observed. "Their security protocols are becoming lax. They're not even bothering to scan for quantum signatures anymore." "Why would they?" General Hayes replied. "As far as they're concerned, we barely understand basic atomic theory, let alone quantum mechanics. Keep monitoring their movements. We need to know the exact moment when their guard is lowest." In their arrogance, the Vexteri failed to notice subtle anomalies in their conquest. They didn't question why human refugees seemed to vanish without a trace. They didn't wonder why their quantum scans occasionally flickered for microseconds. They didn't investigate why their communications sometimes experience inexplicable delays. Admiral Veclor prepared to address his fleet, ready to declare another victory for the Empire. Earth's major power centers had been neutralized, its military forces scattered, its population in hiding. Victory, he believed, was merely a formality at this point. But in the quantum-shielded command center, General Hayes watched the Admiral's confidence with grim satisfaction. "They think they've won," he said to his assembled staff. "That's exactly what we needed." Dr. Chen nodded, her fingers dancing over quantum controls. "All systems are in position. The network is ready. We can activate everything on your command." The general looked at the tactical display one final time, watching as the Vexteri fleet settled into orbit, their ships spreading out to establish permanent control over what they thought was a conquered world. "Not yet," he said. "Let them get a little more comfortable. Let them start setting up their occupation infrastructure. The more resources they commit, the more complete their defeat will be." In the skies above, the Vexteri celebration had begun. They had no idea that their greatest victory was about to become their most devastating defeat. The Vexteri occupation of Earth had reached its third week when Admiral Veclor first noticed something was wrong. It started with small anomalies. Quantum communication delays lasting microseconds longer than they should, targeting systems requiring recalibration more frequently than usual, power fluctuations that couldn't be explained. "Run a full diagnostic of all systems," he ordered, all four eyes narrowing as he studied the reports. His subordinates rushed to comply, but their scans revealed nothing unusual. Everything appeared to be functioning within normal parameters. Beneath the Antarctic ice, General Hayes watched the Vexteri's growing confusion with grim satisfaction. "They're starting to notice," he said to his assembled command staff. "Dr. Chen, are we ready?" Sarah Chen stood before the quantum control interface, her fingers hovering over the crystalline controls. The network is fully charged. All quantum nodes are synchronized. We can begin any time. The general nodded. Initiate Phase 1. Across the globe, in quantum-shielded facilities hidden deep underground, humans activated systems that had been waiting silently for this moment. The quantum network that spanned the planet hummed to life, its processors calculating and executing operations at a level the Vextari had never imagined possible. The first sign that something was catastrophically wrong came when Vekler's flagship lost quantum communications with half its fleet. The Admiral was still processing this when his tactical officer reported an even more disturbing development. "Sir, our quantum shields are fluctuating, but the power systems show no anomalies. It's as if reality itself is becoming uncertain around our ships." Vekler's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Impossible. These primitives barely understand basic spaceflight. They can't possibly." His words were cut off as every quantum-based system on his ship suddenly displayed conflicting information. Weapon targeting systems showed thousands of phantom targets. Navigation computers calculated impossible positions. Even the artificial gravity began to fluctuate. In her command center, Captain Santos watched as the quantum weapon platforms revealed themselves, dropping their camouflage in perfect synchronization. What had appeared to be simple communications satellites now showed their true nature. Advanced weapon systems that could manipulate the quantum fabric of space itself. "All platforms are online," she reported through the quantum network. "The Vextari fleet is completely surrounded." Dr. Rodriguez monitored the data streams as humanity's quantum technology began to assert its dominance over Vextari systems. Their quantum shields are trying to adapt, but they can't. Our understanding of quantum mechanics is generations ahead of theirs. We're not just disrupting their technology. We're rewriting the rules they thought they understood. The Vextari fleet hung paralyzed in orbit as their systems failed one by one. Their mighty warships, designed to inspire terror across the galaxy, now floated helplessly as human quantum technology systematically dismantled their capabilities. Admiral Vekler watched in horror as reports flooded in from across his fleet. Ships were losing power, weapon systems were going offline, and quantum communications were completely scrambled. But worse than the technical failures was the realization that dawned on him. They had been deceived. Masterfully, completely deceived. "This was a trap," he whispered, his secondary eyes widening in shock. "All of it. From the very beginning." On the surface, what the Vextari had thought were abandoned cities came alive with activity. Quantum shields dropped, revealing advanced infrastructure that had been invisible to alien scans. Military bases that had been destroyed emerged unscathed, their defenses powered by zero-point energy generators that the Vextari hadn't even known existed. Colonel Wu coordinated the ground response as human forces emerged from their hidden bunkers. They wore powered armor that made Vextari combat suits look primitive, wielding weapons that could manipulate quantum fields with surgical precision. "All ground forces are engaging," she reported. "The Vextari troops are completely cut off from their command structure. Their quantum communications are severed." In orbit, the Vextari fleet tried desperately to regroup, to counter this impossible threat. But their every move had been anticipated by humanity's quantum predictive network. Each attempt to restore their systems was met with a precise countermeasure that had been prepared years in advance. General Hayes stood in the command center, watching as humanity's true power was finally unveiled. "Send the message," he ordered. "Let them understand exactly what they're facing." Dr. Chen nodded and activated the quantum communication system. Every Vextari ship received the same transmission, a complete technical breakdown of how thoroughly they had been outmaneuvered. The message explained in precise detail how humanity had hidden their true capabilities, how they had studied Vextari technology for decades, and how they had developed countermeasures for every weapon and defense system in the alien arsenal. Admiral Vekler read the transmission with growing dread. The humans hadn't just prepared for this invasion. They had orchestrated it. Every retreat, every apparent defeat, Every sign of primitive technology had been carefully crafted to draw the Vexteri into this perfect trap. How? He demanded of the empty air. How could we have missed this? The answer, transmitted directly to his command console, was simple. You saw what you expected to see. Your greatest weakness was your certainty in your own superiority. Around the planet, humanity's quantum network continued to expand its control, systematically dismantling the greatest invasion fleet the galaxy had ever known. The empire that had never known defeat was about to learn a harsh lesson about underestimating their opponents. Admiral Veclor stood on the bridge of his crippled flagship, watching as his mighty fleet hung powerless in Earth's orbit. The quantum displays that once showed his overwhelming military superiority now revealed the true extent of humanity's technological advancement. Every attempt to regain control of his ship's systems was met with immediate, precise countermeasures that seemed to anticipate his every move. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, mandibles trembling, "the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies. They're requesting our surrender." The Admiral's secondary eyes closed in resignation. For the first time in the Empire's history, a Vexteri fleet commander faced total defeat. The humans hadn't just defeated them. They had systematically dismantled every advantage the Vexteri thought they possessed. In the Antarctic Command Center, Dr. Chen monitored the quantum network status as it maintained its grip on the alien fleet. "Their systems are completely under our control," she reported. "They couldn't restart their weapons or drives even if they wanted to." General Hayes nodded, studying the holographic display showing the positions of every Vexteri ship and ground force. "And our casualties?" "Minimal," Colonel Wu responded. "Most of their ground forces surrendered as soon as they realized their combat suits and weapons had been neutralized. The few who resisted were quickly contained by our quantum field generators." Dr. Rodriguez entered the command center, his expression both triumphant and thoughtful. "The quantum predictive network just finished its final analysis. The Vexteri Empire has never encountered anything like this. Their entire strategic doctrine is based on technological superiority. They have no protocols for dealing with a technologically superior opponent." The general allowed himself a small smile. "Then let's show them how a truly advanced civilization handles victory." Through the quantum network, humanity transmitted their terms to the Vexteri fleet. They were not the harsh demands of a vengeful conqueror, but rather a carefully crafted proposal that would reshape the relationship between both species. The terms were simple. The Vexteri would withdraw all forces from Earth's space, acknowledge humanity's sovereignty, and agree to a technological exchange program that would benefit both species. In return, humanity would share some of their quantum innovations, helping the Empire advance beyond their current limitations. Admiral Veclor read the terms multiple times, his primary eyes widening with each review. "They're offering to help us?" he asked incredulously. "After we try to conquer them." Dr. Chen's voice came through the quantum communication system, clear and confident. "We studied your civilization extensively, Admiral. You're not evil. You're just used to being the most advanced species in any room. We're offering you the chance to learn what it means to be part of a larger community of equals." In orbital stations around Earth, Captain Santos and her teams began coordinating with those Vexteri crews who had already signaled their acceptance of the terms. The aliens were astonished to discover that humans had developed solutions to quantum engineering problems that had puzzled Vexteri scientists for generations. On the ground, Colonel Wu organized joint human-Vexteri teams to begin the peaceful withdrawal of invasion forces. The aliens were treated with respect, their wounded cared for with advanced human medical technology that left their own doctors astounded. "Your victory was complete," one Vexteri commander admitted to her. "You could have destroyed us all. Why show mercy?" "Because that's not who we are," she replied. "Humanity didn't hide our advancement out of fear or deception, but because we wanted to understand who you were first. Now we know, and we think you're capable of being better than you've been." In the days that followed, the true scope of humanity's technological achievement became clear to the Vexteri. The quantum network that had defeated their fleet was just the beginning. Human scientists had developed ways to manipulate reality at the quantum level that the Vexteri had never imagined possible. Their understanding of zero-point energy, quantum computing, and space-time mechanics was generations ahead of anything in the Empire. Admiral Veclord finally signed the surrender document in a ceremony that was broadcast across both Earth and the Empire. But it wasn't a traditional surrender. It was the beginning of a new partnership. The Admiral had seen enough to know that humanity could have easily destroyed his fleet and launched a counter-invasion of the Empire. Instead, they chose a path of cooperation and mutual advancement. "We were wrong about you," he admitted to General Hayes after the ceremony. "We thought technological advancement meant conquest and dominance. You've shown us there's another way." The general nodded. "That was the real test, Admiral. Not whether we could defeat you, but whether you could learn from defeat. Your response tells us we made the right choice." As the Vexteri fleet prepared to depart Earth orbit, under their own power, restored by human engineers, Dr. Chen watched from her quantum monitoring station. "Do you think they'll keep their word?" she asked the general. "They will," Hayes replied confidently, "because we didn't just defeat their fleet. We shattered their assumptions about the universe. They've learned that there's always something more advanced, more innovative out there. That's a lesson that changes civilizations." The quantum network continued its silent vigilance as the Vexteri ships departed, not as conquered enemies but as chastened allies. Humanity had revealed itself to the galaxy not through conquest or domination, but through a perfectly executed strategy that demonstrated both their technological superiority and their wisdom in using it.